and coaching through this. And also, the format, which we hope to kind of accomplish, is the presentation piece, and then raise your hand or please use the chat if you have a question, and then we'll ask that along the way to kind of keep it like open dialogue. And so with that, it's a treat to have Dr. Murphy here. I know I've listened to his presentations a few times, and I always feel afterwards like I've taken a yoga class. I just feel like very calm and zen. So thank you so much again for your time, and I'll pass it over to you.
All right, so you'll need your yoga mat as well for this call. So thank you very much for the introduction. This is a super small town of Duxbury. I'm not sure how many people on this call are from Duxbury, but for those that don't know, I live in Duxbury and I teach in Duxbury. So I've known the Parent Connection, Emil Nichols and Kim for a while, and it's been just been really close to my heart working in Duxbury and supporting the community. So to get a chance to do this really connects with me on so many levels, and so I want to be able to make this as meaningful as possible to the audience. And I don't care if I have to shift gears to answer certain questions. It's not real. I don't care. We have a topic here, and it's focused towards middle high school, just to keep us grounded in a certain category of age, right? But you'll find that may not be relevant to where you're at, because you may have a high schooler or a middle schooler that's struggling with regulation skills that might even put them in 3rd and 4th grade developmentally, and that's okay. So I want us to really target questions that help you. So from that format. So there's 2 parts to this. I'm speaking now, and then Judy Johnson, who's one of our senior parent coaches at Effective Consulting, is going to be speaking next Wednesday, and she's going to be hitting on the elementary level. But if you're interested in really the brain integration perspective and really understanding how the brain works, that's going to be an excellent presentation for you to put in your calendar for next week. Very similar format as well. Okay, so I'm going to try to move to the next screen. Here we go. Okay, so to get us started, like coaching, we always talk about goals. So it's really important from this presentation and from parenting perspective, what is the goal? What are we trying to do collectively as a parent? And I thought this goal is something I've been using for a long time, and it can connect with most parents, most kids. Most kids read this and they can't disagree. So it's important for us to recognize what we're trying to do, and collectively and individually, the frustrations that can come from the struggles when we have our goals for our children and they're struggling to meet them, right? So what I want us to do is take a minute and try to maybe reframe some perceptions that we might have. What if middle school was not a time to prepare for high school? And high school was not a time to prepare for college? What if learning had no borders and no timeline? What if it's a time to cultivate innate gifts and interests, really, and to cultivate strengths until our kids awaken and mature enough to make independent, life-changing decisions, right? To make their own decisions. What if academics was not as high as a priority as we thought? If this is true, then it might reshape how we truly connect with our struggling students. And what I'm going to do is move with this notion in mind and really try to help us look beyond the perspective of our children as students and start to really tap into something deeper within them. To start this, to move through that, the first homework assignment or the first workshop question I'm going to ask you. Again, my questions are heavy and they're loaded, but they're awesome. I want you to take a minute and on your notepad, if you're just joining me, you're going to jump in and try to catch up a little bit. You need something to write with to make this effective time for you. Is grab a notepad, write your child's name on the first page. Pick one child. Okay? If you have 3 in your mind, just pick one for now. And write your child's name at the top. Okay? And then I want you to think of your child. Take a minute and just start thinking of your child at the age of 25. Okay? And I want you to think about who they are. Don't think about who you want them to be so much as who they are. Okay, see it from their perspective. Yes, your values are there, right? Your parenting values are there. The tireless work you put into being an amazing mom or dad is there. But it all relates to how they use it based on their strengths, interests, and goals. So who are they at 25? All right. First question. Okay. Now I want you just to pause on that for a second. Again, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to get you thinking. You may want to go back later on and revisit these questions to make this, you know, to really come full circle with this presentation. But back to now, I want you to take a minute. I want you to write down maybe 1 through 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Write down your child's strengths, skills, attributes, characteristics. What are the 5 things? The second part of that. Now, again, I'm starting you on these questions. Don't have time for us to pause indefinitely for everyone to catch up. That's okay. Just pause. Second question is, what are 5 things that you nag about the most? We'll be talking about that type. And then the last question is, what are your fears as it relates to your child? What do you fear? Fears. Forgot the S, sorry. Okay. What you're doing is you're putting out there into the future a picture, an energy, an identity that breaks any moment we live right now, where we might be bogged down in the struggles. Okay. See our children in the future. It's what we do with our children in the coaching process as well. So we can do it from a parenting perspective as well. Look into the future and start to future see our children in their true identity. And it really helps to calm the waters and identity. And so, okay. Next slide. Developmentally, there is a lot of research that says that our children, whether they have ADHD or not, I'm going to broaden that to be that our struggling children that have these lagging skills, that have these chronic unsolved problems that might persist, they might be developmentally immature. They'll get there. They're just not there yet. School's not waiting for them to catch up. Their peers are not waiting for them to catch up. Society and even our parents are not waiting for them to catch up. Okay. But they may be 30% below. So it gets us asking, if we were to address their executive function needs and their self-regulatory needs, can we start doing it at their developmental level and not pretending that they are ready to handle the expectations that match their age? So this diagram is awesome. It's out of the Developing Child, harvard.edu. An amazing diagram that I'm going to use from now on. People are laughing because they've seen this so many times, but I keep getting better and better at explaining it. So here you go. See the gate? I'm going to talk about this gate throughout this presentation. This gate right now probably is you. So stimulus comes in and you have the red side and you have the blue side. The red side is that automatic, sometimes fight or flight, sometimes the amygdala hijack, the emotion, the dysregulation, but sometimes not, you know, breathing, this automatic stimulus that plays out within our bodies, within our thinking, within our thoughts, moods, emotions. You have the stimulus that comes in, and then you have this blue area where that stimulus comes in and it's filtered, where it has a moment to be caught through attention, awareness, right? The awareness grabs a hold of a thought, an emotion, or an external stimulus, like the teacher calling your name in class. And you have a moment where you have to do something with that stimulus. Or not do something, right? This is like the working memory of things, right? So the attention is I grab a hold of the information and I filter it through self-regulatory constructs and executive function skills. And I manipulate that information in a deliberate, purposeful way. And then I act on it, or I respond. Now that respond may be just a metacognitive process, right? That doesn't really, that you don't see behaviorally. Or maybe you do see it in a deliberate action, right? The initiation of a task or the transition between preferred to non-preferred, okay? So parents, many parents, they are that gate as their children learn and grow and mature and learn and practice using their executive function skills more deliberately and their self-regulatory skills more deliberately. Okay, so what are executive functions? Quick overview. I think at this point, I just pretend most of my parents get this or they know enough about executive functions. They don't want to talk about it. But if you do, that's a very different presentation. In this case, executive functions, for the sake of our framework of our discussion, are 3 categories. And I'm taking this all from the Harvard University website, which is really robust and it helps break them down into 3 categories: working memory, inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility. Working memory is ability to just hold information in your mind. 3 tasks: go get changed, go brush your teeth, and make your bed. Okay. Many of you might be laughing at that. You're like, oh boy, like one of those things would get done. That's okay. That's working memory in action. Inhibitory control is the ability to manage impulsive like thoughts or decisions, right? To manage distractions. And that for younger children, that might be the H in ADHD, the hyperactivity. And so that's legit. That's a place where you just saw in the red and the blue. It's a lot of red going on there. And then cognitive flexibility. That's the ability, that is that metacognitive aspect of thinking and transition between preferred, non-preferred activities, to be able to wake up and transition into a day. These kinds of rigid thinking can show itself throughout the week, day, hours, and minutes. And so that's they get to switch, to adjust to changed priorities and perspectives, okay? So from a self-regulatory perspective, there's 3 areas I want you to think about. Really, all of this is this metacognitive, the thinking about behavior, thinking about myself. Self-efficacy is an awesome word. And I'll talk about this a couple times here. Self-efficacy is how do I view myself? How do I monitor? How do I judge? How do I react to my own behaviors? And how do I then, in doing that, how do I use executive functions to shift, to transition, to act, to organize my thinking and motions and decisions and actions, right? So when you see the stimulus come in, you want to help your child practice to become their own gatekeeper, right? To be able to see all the stimulation coming through in their life deliberately and with greater awareness, so that they can learn and practice how to use that information in a meaningful way. And so when they act, they're acting with intention, right? And it's a journey. It takes a lot of practice for our kids. And some of us aren't born innately gifted at it. It's okay. It's okay. We have to focus on their strengths and teach them how to manage their weaknesses. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to talk about family connections, because I don't care if your kid is in high school or middle school. They need someone in their corner that can help them, right? And this term I'm going to use is a connection, a family connection. And what that does is it helps build everything, from emotional resilience, metacognitive skills, problem-solving skills, and self-regulatory skills. And so how do you do that? Well, there's so many layers to this question. First and foremost, it's like I have to become something else sometimes. I have to become the parent my child needs me to be. And it's like, holy shit, Dave, you kidding me? That's nearly impossible sometimes, because I can barely be myself. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you pick your moments, and you try to connect with your child in ways that are meaningful and positive, so that you are building a foundation that's strong. So when stuff gets really tough, they have that foundation to stand on, and you to rely on for effective problem-solving help, okay? Personal story, my son, he's 5, and he's into Pokemon, and I am never going to be into Pokemon, but here I am learning how to play Pokemon with this. Now, this is the card game, not the online version, not Pokemon Go. We have the mat set up and all the cards stacked in rows, and I'm reading online the rules. It's a super complicated game. Here we are. I'm now the dad learning how to play Pokemon. So the second part of connecting is so important too, is being proactive. If there's a takeaway from this presentation, it's if there are problems, unsolved problems, and I'm trying to connect with my kid on solving them, I have to become better at being proactive in how I do that. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll work through some strategies on doing that. Really important. and really helpful, not only in continuing to have a good relationship with your child, but in terms of sanity as a parent, right? So and a kind of another framework for this is a kind of from teaching. If you want to, tackle unsolved problems with your child, that's very, very vital to their development. But sometimes they struggle in so many areas that we find ourselves always nagging and complaining about problems. Okay, so if that's true, can I start changing my approach and tackling and addressing and highlighting 10 strengths before I start tackling unsolved problems? And if I can do that, I have this 10-to-1 ratio. I'm building a foundation with that 10-to-1 ratio, a strong foundation that my child can stand on so that they're more resilient to the problems and talking about problems and solutions moving forward. So other areas that benefit from this connection process from a parent and child is you're building this safe and trusting relationship, which is really, part one of all of this. Even in middle school, obviously starting in elementary at a young age is easier, but there's no time. You can always start from scratch. There's no time limit on being able to build this safe, trusting relationship and connecting with our kids more effectively. In doing that, there's the emotional connection, behavioral connection, family connection, cognitive connection. There's different areas that I can build that relationship with my child. Okay. And once we connect with our kids, we can tap into limitless possibilities. And I'll tell you, I have one of my clients, the mom is on the phone with me and she was just, why is my son lying all the time? And he's a sophomore and he's freshman in college, but he was, should be a sophomore and he's just really struggling, but he can't rely on his mom and the relationship's really damaged. It's easier for him to lie right now than it is to tell the truth to her. So that's a really hard place for them to be because he needs her, but she's struggling with what to do with his, with his lagging skills and these unsolved problems. And so she has her own work that she has to figure out, or else she's going to lose her son forever. He's not going to come back. He's going to find other people to rely on. And they're going to have a broken relationship. So that's, to me, the most important thing is family. So building that connection is really important. Being the person our children need us to be is really important. And in doing that, I'm helping on all levels with my child's development, brain integration being one of the most important areas. How they can filter information through their frontal lobe, right? How they can manage emotions and how they calm themselves to process from kind of an amygdala hijack situation to a frontal lobe executive function problem-solving situation. And in this connection journey, what I want us to always remember, and this can be super hard, but awareness can matter, right? We can become our own gatekeeper within our own mind. And we can filter through with our children as much as possible. What are their strengths? What are their striving instincts? And how do I bring out the best in them? How do I help my child continuously filter every day, finishing strong with what their passions, their interests, their strengths, and being part of that? And honestly, I just don't care about school. I don't. And you guys are like, but you're a teacher, David. I know. Dichotomy there. But I care about our children's future in building who they are meant to be. And sometimes we have to ignore school in order to find that. Because our children, not all children were born to thrive in that brick and mortar world. They just weren't. I go back to the Percy Jackson book series and I say, if you haven't read that, if your child hasn't read that, go get the audiobook. There's 7 or 8 books. They're just awesome. They're just awesome. And you get to help your child connect with somebody that is a demigod. And anyways, just a super cool story. But there's just a story of a kid that didn't connect in the classroom, kicked out of multiple schools, but he had gifts and those gifts showed themselves. So that's where we are as parents. Because the truth is school does suck. I have a kiddo I've known for years now. When I met him, he was a sophomore at Sacred Heart, and we got him through high school, barely, 1.2 GPA. And I'll tell you, this kid was the coolest kid in the world. Super nice, handsome, charismatic. He could walk into a room of adults and handle himself just fine. But school, it tapped into every one of his weaknesses. He got it through it. One college took him and he got a $20,000 scholarship. He spent half the semester there. He spent one semester there and then transferred to Bridgewater. And in 4 years of Bridgewater, got his degree in business. And now he's down in North Carolina. And he just sent me a text. I just called to check in on him as I was doing this presentation. I was like, let me reach out to Sam. He's doing great. Because, and the thing about this is Sam's of the world. He was employed all through high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior in high school. He never not had a job. He had a job every day, all year long. He was a great worker. Charismatic, like I said. He could sell you anything. And so, he just had to get through. He had to figure that part of himself out, and he had to make a lot of mistakes. And boy, did he have a mom to help him with his writing and help him with his math. He had 3 tutors in college to help him with his math. He got through it. He had started to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. There we are, right? So it's the Sams of the world that they'll get there. It's just, how do we help them, right? So we start to figure out what their mirroring traits are. This is from Ned Hallowell out of Sudbury. If you guys don't know him, he's just a prolific author. He's written like 15 books. And but Super Parenting for ADHD is one of them. And talks about mirroring traits and cognitive strengths in our children. And what I want us to do is think about the stuff we see as being negative in our children. Maybe it's stubbornness, impulsivity, intrusiveness. Maybe it's hyperactivity. Maybe it's hyper-focused. Whatever it is. And then we start asking ourselves, what are the gifts here? What are the strengths here? Why? How is this maybe a negative now? But the truth is this is what's going to blaze the future for them when they're older. My child cannot put down that guitar, right? A little side note, one of my clients is building his own guitar this summer. I was like, oh, awesome. He's dyslexic. He went to a private school for dyslexia and really has struggled through school, but his gifts are a mile long, and this kid is building his own guitar. I was like, oh. I said, I wish I was half as interesting as some of the clients I work with. So you start thinking about the mirroring traits, and you start to really reframe the energy you put to things. And it's a significant game changer in how your child responds. Try it. But you have to work with your partner, right? Because you got to hold yourself accountable to this, because you kind of may be in a rut about certain behaviors and certain personality characteristics. Another client, I'm sharing a lot of stories. Sorry, I'm hoping that's okay. But this client, Jack, is what we call twice exceptional, and Jack has there's a relationship between Jack and goats, by the way. So Jack, when he was elementary school, he had just an obsession. Now that's a negative way of saying that he loved animals, loved them. And he loved them so much that at a very young age, he was birthing calves, and he was playing with real animals. He was down and dirty with everything about animals at a young age. Couldn't get enough of it. But school was just his demise. He was literally, the anxiety and depression was just crushing him about the damage that school was creating. And so we had to re-examine his day. Luckily, we just looked at a day and we said, okay, to affirm his strengths during a day, what can Jack start doing? Well, you can't drop out of school, Jack. I know that, but we can make your day more enjoyable by balancing it out between the struggles that you have to work through and your innate gifts that we want to explore and continue to give you a chance to explore. And he was a born veterinarian. You just can't get there yet, right? He's got prerequisites to get through. But we started, every day he started going to the barn, and every day he was volunteering at veterinary clinics. And every day he was giving chances within his classroom to research and develop this interest. He ended up going to an Aggie school for high school, okay, and found his love because he was able to focus on animal care, and he was able to focus on his passions at the Aggie school. Now, we all know where his story is going to end. He's going to become a vet. It was just a question of how do we help him from where he is now to balance out his life so that he is continues to attach into his strengths and interests. Okay, so there's a lot of jacks out there in the world, and sometimes their deficits overwhelm their interests, and we never see them. We never see their interests. We never see their strengths because they're so bogged down in their weaknesses, right? So grit. Every one of our kiddos is super gritty. They are so good at failing. I mean, they struggle all day long to interact with the world around them. We just have to let them know that over and over and over again, that it's not about preventing failure. It's just about recognizing that if I am going to fail, I should know why, and I should know where I'm trying to go in this journey, right? So our kids are born with certain skills, and how we use those skills shapes everything, right? And the grit aspect of things is where we want to be with our children. We want to be talking to them about the language of grit. We want to be talking to them about failing, our own stories. If you have failed and you haven't told your child about your own failure stories, then you should sit them down and say, man, we talk about roses and thorns in our family. So we talk about the roses of a day and we talk about the thorns of a day. And that's really cool. It lets our children know that failure is part of life. Yeah, when you fail too much, you start to really regret life. Okay, so I need a balance, right? Or I need a shift in my perspective around what failure really is. Sometimes the perfectionist mindset needs to, can be a real struggle, because when you have a perfectionist mindset, the smallest little increment of imperfection is perceived as a failure, and therefore an identity around weakness and inadequacies. And that's really a harder journey. But helping our children to grow from within is really helpful. And I talked about the self-efficacy construct. Sometimes we as parents, we get in there and we solve all the problems. We prompt our children throughout the day. We tell them what to do and when to do it. And we anticipate problems so they don't have to experience them. And I'll tell you, all of that is, no one can ever criticize that. But if we're not thoughtful about those kind of parenting strategies, then we may find our children stuck in this state of learned helplessness, where they never practiced enough times the sequence of failure, recovery, failure, problem solve, right? The chronic journey cycle of problem solving is a metacognitive journey, right? It's thinking about who I am, thinking about who I'm trying to be, thinking about the mistakes I'm making and what I need to do to move myself forward. If I have too many people prompting me through things, I can actually find myself moving into a state of despair where I feel like I can't solve my own problems without someone doing it for me. So this is why I talk a lot about strengths. I talk a lot about building the emotional grit through affirmation, affirming our children's journey and making them realize that, no, it's not about failing. I love that you fail. I also love that you get up every time, right? I'm proud of the struggles that you have to work through. I'm more proud of how you handle them and how you work through them. Yeah, you get emotional. Yeah, you have temper changes, but you always dust yourself off. Right? And that's the most important part. You'll figure it out. I believe in you. You'll figure it out. I trust you. You'll figure it out. School's hard. It was hard for me too. I failed and failed and failed and failed. And look at me. Think I'm doing okay? Yeah, Dad, you're doing okay. And so, just connecting with that can be really, really, really affirming to their identity, right? One of my high school kids, he just graduated, and he had a really rough middle school and a rough first 2 years of high school, almost got kicked out of high school. He started to really act out. School was super hard for him. And I say super hard. I think he graduated with a 2.2 GPA, but that's because the first 2 years, I think it was probably a 1.1. And the second 2 years, he was able to get, a 2.8, 2.7 to try to balance that off. And he grew up exponentially in the last 2 years of high school. School wasn't any easier for him, but his perspective changed. He grew up. And he's a very charismatic kid, very gregarious. His strengths were in interacting with people, and his weaknesses were everything about school. The learning process of school was super hard for him. So he started acting out as a way of just coping, really. But not too many college options at that point. That's okay. We started focusing on his strengths. When he met me, we just started celebrating everything he does every day to show up every day to school. I was like, man, you're the strongest kid I ever met. School couldn't be any harder for anybody, but you show up every day. Wow, that's remarkable. And you want to go to college? Man, I'm impressed, seriously. So what do you want to do in college? Well, we started matching. He actually got into Maine Maritime, which is just a phenomenal program. If you don't know much about it, the maritime programs are just awesome. There's a few around the country. And kids walk out of those programs with a job. Their job placement rate is like 90%. It's ridiculous. So it's not about the struggle. It's helping our children work through it, but not being in the driver's seat, right? We get out of the driver's seat and we support them in the process, right? So questions for you, quick exercise. You ready? What are 3 of my child's passions and interests? We kind of talked on this a little bit already, so you can kind of check that off. What are their weaknesses that I can see as their strengths? This is how I can start to reframe what I might see as deficits and see them as actually being some of the innate strengths. Like if you have a stubborn personality, that might be the best type of personality when you start to figure out what you want to do with your life, because no one's going to get in your way, right? A self-centered personality, that kid, as soon as they start to figure out what they want to do, nothing's going to stop them, because they won't really, they're just going to blaze a trail. And then someone else may have to come around and clean it up, because they're still going to be disorganized, right? There's still going to be bad time managers, maybe, but that's okay. But it's just knowing where you're going, because and affirming that as it aligns with your strengths, right? And then you think about grit statements is really cool. Okay, unsolved problems. Trish, how are we doing? Any questions?
None yet. So please use the chat if you have any questions.
Okay, cool. All right. It's so funny. I don't have anybody's faces here. It's so interesting. I feel like I'm literally talking to myself, but you all are listening. So,
we're here with you.
No questions at me. I think this is helpful, and then I'm like, okay, well, so tell me what you're thinking, and if you have, I can't even get eye contact or nonverbal cues. It's so interesting. So let's talk about unsolved problems.
We do have one question.
David, I do have one question here.
Oh, yes.
I'm reading this from the chat. I'm actually curious if you would ask the kids those questions on the last slide about strengths and challenges.
Yes. So I haven't talked about that yet, but everything about this presentation, and when you think about what you're trying to do as a parent, you should involve your child in as much as possible. Sometimes we think about problems with our children, and then we never ask ourselves, what would my child think of this problem? And then we go and ask them, and they're like, oh, I would just do this. Like, our children are not clueless, as we sometimes think that these problems are our own, and then we just go and ask our kid what's going on, or their strengths or weaknesses. We can ask them any of these questions. So I'm going to get into unsolved problems, and it's the same thing. Everything about what I'm talking about, you're just going to turn around and start working with your children on. Okay, so, but yeah, that was a great question. Absolutely. Empower our children to be part of the conversation. Empower them, builds them up. It doesn't break them down. So problems. This is old school when I talk about the buckets. I don't know how many of you remember sometimes new books come out, and after 300 new books, we kind of lose touch with some of the simple books that started the whole process of parenting. So, I would say this is maybe even a little bit of teaching strategies as well. But when we think about our children and we think about problems, we think about unsolved problems, meaning there are plenty of problems that have been solved. And then we start thinking about the overwhelming list. Maybe there's 15, maybe there's 20. I just want to break them down and categorize them a little better. From a parenting perspective, it's easier that way, okay? And I'm not running around like a chicken with my head cut off, just out of control with unsolved problems and just nagging and being reactionary. If I put some deliberate attention to this, bucket A is just emergencies, the immediate problems that come up. Okay, the stuff that can't wait. Okay, that's bucket A. Safety comes first kind of stuff. All right, we all know what that kind of problem is. B is the problems that are definitely important, but I can be thoughtful about how I address them. All right. Bucket C is something that I want to address. It's just not something that's big enough to put in bucket B, or it's something I just can put on the side for now. Right. So for example, I had this parent that just couldn't get off of the toilet seat not being flushed. I said, okay, the chronic nagging around a toilet seat not being flushed can be its own problem for your kid. And whatever you're doing is not working, of course, because your child's still not flushing the toilet. But is that a bucket B problem or C? It's a parent decision. But when we started making the list and started organizing the list, we're like, well, maybe we can just put that aside right now, because my child needs to learn. Bigger problems might be morning routine and getting out of bed, or managing health related concerns, or managing academic concerns, or whatever other problems that I find myself saying, well, I can put that on the back burner for now until some of these bigger problems. So you start to organize it. And by organizing it, you start to give yourself a chance to proactively address them with your kid. Right here, okay. So in doing this is a you can all take a deep breath, all right? The truth is so many of our children's problems become our own. Okay, and I first feel like it's so important for all parents to let go of owning those problems. They're not yours. We have enough problems. I mean, come on, right? And parenting is hard enough, but taking on the burden of all of our children's problems is not going to do us any good, and it won't do our children any good. Okay? And so by doing that, you're releasing the energy related to it as well. Just letting that stuff go as my ownership. Now I can shift a little bit. And if I treat the problem as my child's, then I can address it actually in a very different way. And my energy shifts as well as I address it. So we can start looking at these unsolved problems less emotionally. And we can also be proactive in the problem solving process. We can be inclusive and collaborative. Realizing it's not my problem. I don't have to solve it, but I can help my child, because it is a bucket B, and it's something that I won't want to tolerate as a parent, allowing this problem to continue. Okay, this unsolved problem, right? So this connect to redirect refrigerator sheet is starts to creep down into kind of an elementary level, but it's a really good resource for any parent that is dealing with it, has a child that has some lagging skills that might be developmental delays as well, where their behaviors might fall into an elementary kind of discussion. So it's a really great resource. You can just connect, you can Google that, and everything by Dan and Tina is great. Whole Brain Child, which is what I have here, is a phenomenal resource. If you are attending Judy's lecture presentation next week, I think Judy's in this call, that she will be talking about this book. It's a significant part of our parent coaching model, and well worth the time to read, because the strategies in there just really work. So okay, let's say you have a problem in your mind. Okay, your kid's not getting up in the morning, and you know that that's a problem. Like, you could say tomorrow that problem will persist. You don't even need to nag about that tomorrow, because you already know it's going to happen. So if you know a problem's going to happen, can I be proactive? Yes. The answer is yes. Most of the time, if it's a bucket B. Bucket A, no, I can't be proactive in a bucket A. Right? It's just fight or flight, reaction, got to move on. Bucket B stuff, I can be proactive. So I can start engaging my child, high school or middle school. I notice you're struggling with this waking up in the morning time period. What's up? I don't know. Well, I have some ideas. I have some thoughts. Can I share them with you? No, so you're stating a problem and you're putting your child in the driver's seat to work through it. And you can collaborate on options and discussions and ideas so that when you start to come up with, so you're connecting and we start to empathize. I didn't even empathize in that moment, right? So it looks like it's really hard for you to wake up and, right? And I know waking up's hard. It's hard for me, right? I sometimes have to hit snooze a couple times in the morning, right? So this can be hard for a lot of people, and I get that. So what's going on? So you're connecting with your child, and then you start to ask them, start to really open up, if possible, meaning if that connection goes well and your child is receptive to this, to dialoguing, then you can invite them to being part of a problem-solving process, brainstorm some ideas. Now, if your child's in middle school, and you've never done this, it's not going to come easily. There will be a lot of I forgots. There'll be a lot of it's not my fault. There'll be a lot of I can't. There'll be a lot of I don't know. That's okay. You got to think of this as a muscle that you need to build over time, and it just takes practice. If you really want to get better at this, like, okay, like you know that this is a hard journey for you as a parent, go to Ross Green's website, livesinthebalance.com, livesinthebalance.com, Ross Green. He has hours and hours and hours and hours of free content. It's excellent stuff. He's the one that wrote The Explosive Child. He worked at a Mass General Hospital and broke off from there a while ago. And his content is just excellent. So I'd invite you to explore that. But in this problem-solving skill process, you're finding yourself not nagging as much, which is great for everybody, especially you. And where you're tapping into your child's ownership of problems even before you know they're going to happen. So let's anticipate what might happen tomorrow morning. Let's come up with a plan A and a plan B. Whoa. Right, that's affirming. That really helps your child work through it independently, or own the problem and work through it. Right, and you talk about, so quick exercise for you on this point. When you think of what are 3 unsolved problems that are on your mind right now during this conversation, what are they? Write them down. Just acknowledge them. Because there'll be something you talk to your partner tonight about. Because you want to be on the same page with what you see as bucket A, B, and C. What are 3 unsolved problems that I can just put into bucket C? Again, talk to your husband or wife tonight, and so you're on the same page. Realizing let's tackle a problem together versus dividing and conquering 6 problems separately. And when we think about developmental lagging skills, maybe there's some problems that you put on your child that they really aren't ready to handle or solve on their own right now. And they need help, and that'll be something you'll just keep helping them with. Right, and I do talk about the morning waking up because it can be a really big deal. Really big deal. And sometimes it's not worth tackling because it's such a big problem, or it's such a chronic problem that you haven't been able to work through, that you just let it go for now. Put it in the bucket C category and work on other problems, unsolved problems, that you can have a greater return on your collaborative problem solving, okay? Middle school. Yeah, middle school's hard. I think that the easiest thing for, the easiest thing for middle school is true to avoid it. Avoid middle school. But seeing how you can't, there are some things you can do to make the journey easier for your kids. Having that strong connection is step 1. Not giving them a cell phone is step 2. I get it. You guys are like, oh, you're crazy. Yeah, I know. I get on a soapbox about that cell phone, but middle school is hard enough. When they have a cell phone, it doesn't seem to make it easier. And I'd like to have somebody prove me wrong on that. but the stress of the social interactions can be so challenging that it bogs down everything else that our kids have to figure out. So some things to keep in mind are your kids are watching you, they're watching me, they're watching us. So what we do matters. We don't need to talk that much in middle school. Our kids, let's imagine they've been with you from the beginning. There's not much else you can say that they haven't heard already and isn't internalized. They may not yet be acting on those values or those expectations quite yet, but it doesn't mean they aren't listening. So sometimes talking too much they'll just shut you out, right? So leading by example can be so powerful, and creating time together can be so powerful. And just giving your child any opportunities to stay connected to that nucleus that will keep them safe and secure as they work through the tumultuous world of middle school. You can't avoid problems in middle school. They exist. It's part of, I don't know, let's just say it's part of the journey. But helping them work through as many as they can, or giving them a chance to do it on their own, empowering them through skills around how do you advocate for yourself, right? And the skill of self-advocacy is so powerful. The skill of problem solving is so powerful. Middle school meltdowns can become almost, the tantrums, they can be a big deal in middle school. Kids really, the dysregulation of emotions can be super heightened, and kids can get stuck. The teenager can get stuck in this amygdala hijack cycle where they just can't process. I would say, let's expect that to happen, but let's give them a plan that you've worked through 15 times while they're calm and available, right? So the 3-2-1 magic, if you've been a parent that used that in the past, raise your hand. That's the 3-2-1 or 1-2-3. It's okay, 1-2-3 timeouts kind of stuff. The 3-2-1 magic is taps into a part of them that's really deep, right? Because if you've used that strategy in the past, you can continue to use it. Just add, you evolve it so it's more mature for their age, but the prompts help them. No talking, just the prompts help them to know that they're crossing a boundary, right? And then give them an out. Where do you want to go? Like, the bedroom is the only out you should talk about for now. As they get older, maybe a walk. There's other strategies, but black and white. They need to hear from us something that has very few words, but lets them know that they're crossing a boundary. Okay, and you can talk to them about this. Have them part of this discussion. Let's talk about how we want to handle those moments when you're struggling and you need a place to calm down. Oh yeah, okay, right. I'm going to say something that's going to help you recognize that you're struggling, so that you don't get in trouble, right? You might be saying things you regret, but that's okay. I'd rather you still transition effectively so that you're going to some place to calm down. Okay, so you can work with your child on this. Really helpful. Middle school sucks. They're going to have these moments. Give them a chance to find refuge and safety and a place to calm down. After they calm down, then you can process. The reconciliation and atonement process is super important. They have to be able to come back together, apologize, reconnect with their family. Yeah, your sister, she really got hurt by what you said. You have to figure out how to make amends on that. I'll help you brainstorm some possibilities, some options, and I can help you. We can figure out when you want to do that. Okay, so as a middle schooler, if they're struggling with temporal awareness and spatial awareness, meaning they're really dysregulated around time management and spatial task management, there's nothing better than creating a schedule for them that they're part of, right? So I have a sample model. I can share the link on the discussions at the end here so you can access it. Just create a schedule of what the morning, afternoons, and evenings look like for your child. Have them part of that. especially for the summer. Now we have 2 weeks left of school. You're just going to get through the next 2 weeks. If they're struggling, minimize the damage by working with the teachers, okay? By minimizing expectations, changing assignments, this and that. Just get through the next 2 weeks. But for the summer, you can work on this skill. What the schedule does is it gets you out of the middle of it, but it also creates opportunities for problem solving, and opportunities for engagement, and opportunities for meaningful discussions around what they look like, right? What's your day look like tomorrow? Oh yeah, I forgot. Let me look at my Tuesday schedule. Let me look at my Thursday schedule. Oh yeah. And then you can be creative within that. You can look to next week and say, what do we want next week to look like? And, when you think about themes in the summer, you can talk about themes in the summer. We're doing a summer cohort group. We're organizing this with students, 3 to 6 students, where we can, and I have a sample here for you to look at too, for what a summer can look like in terms of a structure, in terms of a theme. Just have fun with it. When we talk about other opportunities, meaningful chores, our middle schoolers, part of the development is connecting with others, right? And finding meaningful engagements that affirms their identity. So grab a hold of as many opportunities within the family as possible, right? Put them in charge of the grocery list, or, collaboratively with fading support, they're part of making a meal for the week. How awesome is that? Cooking meals for themselves and others. It's so affirming to be able to put a meal in front of your mom or dad that you helped make. It's really, as a middle schooler, they should be doing a lot of that and part of that process. And you obviously make it fun, make it positive, and they're going to want to do more of it, right? So screen time agreement, you have to have that discussion. It's especially for the dysregulated mind that won't get off screens unless there is that discussion. So 2 ways to look at it. One is the temporal time, like a time window that doesn't have contingencies to it, right? I don't know, 10 to 12. My 5-year-old, he gets his shows, 3 shows in the morning, and he knows at 8:30 he can do his shows, 8:30 to whatever, 9:30, and then there's no more screens for the rest of the day. That's his time. He decided on the time, but that's it. There's no more discussions around screens. And it's really important. He had to practice how to transition off them. And there's a consequence if he can't. So why? Because that's really important to learn, right? I mean, screens are super addicting. So you train the brain to be able to transition off at a young age is helpful. As you get older, no, it's a little harder to do. But you can talk about how to do it in relation to tasks. Okay, well, your morning routine involves these 6 or 7 tasks in your morning. There's no screen time until those tasks are complete. So there you have a task relationship. So morning may start at 10, it may start at 9, may start at 8. It doesn't really matter. But after that sequence of time within your schedule, maybe then there's a time period where maybe screen times could be part of the morning or part of the schedule. Okay. The final part is when you think about middle school is finding the tribe is extremely important. Extremely important. And that's just people to connect with. I have a kiddo, Josh, and Josh, I met him in 8th grade, and now he's a junior in high school. And Josh got his butt kicked in middle school. I'm telling you, he was, he struggled with he kind of looked different. He acted different. So which automatically put him in kind of a bullying category. And he had quirkinesses to him. He loved D&D, which is Dungeons and Dragons. And he loved pottery. I mean, super neat kid. I mean, for an adult, super neat kid. He just had to get through these time periods where he's kind of an outlier, right? So he had to make some decisions around what he wanted to do, and he had to organize, we had to work through finding a tribe for him. So he found a social group that he could reconnect with. By high school, which, by the way, he ended up touring South Shore VOTAC in 8th grade because he wasn't sure what he wanted to do about high school. So we empowered him. We gave him a choice. Go look at South Shore VOTAC. And the mom was a little nervous, of course, because huge shift, right, between expectations and kind of norms around South Shore VOTAC versus a typical high school. But we had to let him do this because he was balking at the system at a young age. He was not passing in homework. He was really fighting back, and we had to really give him a chance to stand on his own 2 feet, make his own decisions. You know what he decided? He decided to go to high school. He decided to go to the public high school. I said, wow, man, well, that's taking the harder road, but he started to think more deeply about what he wanted to do. And he walked into the high school fire and he faced it head on. And he ended up starting a Dungeons and Dragons group freshman year in high school. And he started to connect. He started to build his own tribe. which was awesome. I'm super proud of him for that. So you just start thinking about this, and you start to help your child organize themselves around peer groups, especially if they don't have one that is supportive, right? So I don't know, this goes above middle school model, but I would say if your child is definitely into Minecraft, then they probably would still respond to a treasure box or reward bin that can be used during the week. And it's just a bin, and you put stuff in it. Everything you put in there is interesting to your son or daughter. And then you work out some kind of plan. Maybe it's every day, maybe it's every week, maybe there's 2 bins. One is like that Friday thing, which might have something big in it. And then you make these treasure bins contingent on a schedule, or a tackling, celebrating overcoming 5 struggles today. I don't know, have fun with it. I just think this is fun. As a teacher, I've always loved the treasure boxes. And as a parent, it's just a fun way to engage with your child as you shift expectations around what you want them to independently own. And now you've opened the gate, right? You've given them a chance to be the gate of their regulatory system, because now they're motivated. That attention, right? It's a match to motivation. So if I put more of attention to that awareness around who I am and what I'm trying to do, because I want something from the bin, that's okay, right? I'm going to get a lot of praise for that. That's all good. Activities. Oh my goodness. So I got some stuff here. So come on, who plays cribbage? Love cribbage. Teach your child how to play cribbage. Awesome game. Build a structure into your week for that. Chinese checkers. So old school, right? This is Spotted. It's a working memory game. It's a lot of fun. I'm really not good at it. I mean, I think my 5-year-old's better than me at this, but spatial awareness and working memory, and it's a fun game. Classic cards. You can teach poker. You can teach hearts. You can teach spades. All sorts of games your children can learn, and it promotes everything. Canoodle's awesome. It's just a fun game. Just leave these things out. And you have a table. It's called the board game table. And you have 3 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, whatever it is. What do you guys, audience, what do you know about Land of Stories? If you don't know anything about Land of Stories, you should. Okay, Chris Colfer is the author, and he's also the narrator of the audiobook series, the audiobooks. My children have been listening to them nonstop and repeatedly. It's like it's replaced any request for anything other technology. They just listen to Land of Stories. It's a wonderful escape for them. So when you think about audiobooks, Percy Jackson, audiobooks, it's a wonderful opportunity to develop some core skills around verbal processing. Okay, so it's excellent. And if you're not into audiobooks, then become a parent that's into audiobooks. Just have it playing in your house, or bedtime. It's audiobook time. You can listen into the story together. You can talk about it. It's just a great way to connect and build some core skills. So puzzle. This is a great game. It's called Ticket to Ride. Hopefully somebody in the audience has played this, but it is complicated, but not as complicated. It's like Clue, but it's a lot of fun. As you learn to play the first time, you get to play it like 3 or 4 times after that. And then your kids get hooked. So again, connecting, family time, skills, this all works. So if you have a lot of board games your kids can play, have them out and set up the family expectation around incorporating them within the family. Okay. And that's a high school thing as well. It's not just middle school, but high school kids, they're more likely to not want anything to do with their parents, but maybe they'll still like you a little bit and they'll play a game with you from time to time. But, so questions here, I'm going to, oh my goodness. I know I go so much time just flies by. I'm going to skip here because I have some high school stuff that I want to jump into. I'm sorry. I will post these questions so you can tackle them on your own. I promise. High school. As soon as they enter high school, start talking about their future. Just always. No, not negative. Just here's what limitless possibilities. We live in the greatest country on the planet for opportunity. And so you talk to your kid about the litany of opportunities out there, and you start delving into them. What is a gap year? I don't know. There's different types of gap years. What's ROTC? I don't know. What does that mean? You know, vocational high school, if they're young enough, like freshman year in high school, you can still talk about vocational opportunities, especially if your child's really disengaged and you're finding that their strengths would be exponentially magnified at a vocational school. You can't ignore it, okay? And South Shore has an amazing program. By the way, a vocational school doesn't negate college, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but you can still go to college from voc schools. People think you can't. Trade schools, Wentworth, Mass Maritime, community college stuff like 4Cs. I got a great slide on that in a minute. So discuss and then write down what you talk about and what some actionable decisions have been. Write it down, because from a working memory perspective, it's going to be gone the next day. So you want a reference point of what you've talked about and what your child has said that they want to start to do differently. And then keep revisiting it. Because as you revisit that identity with who they are in the future, it strengthens their relationship with what they need to do today. Okay? And then you recognize what the problems are. All right, you do it together. Again, because you're not vested anymore. Like, you just detached as a parent. Yeah, that's hard to do. I get it. But when you detach from it, your emotion to it subsides, and then you can start to have far more meaningful conversations, because your children are not waiting for you to throw them judgment eyes or have some kind of critical statement that makes them run for the hills, because that's what they'll do in high school, right? So you think about health management, when you think about priorities, right? School comes second to how I manage myself, right? So if I have addictive-like tendencies, if I don't have a good peer group, if I have mental health challenges, and I'm not seeing a therapist, these things I need to build into my schedule and paying more attention to. Manage my own medication if that's something that I need. Study skills are a prerequisite to college. It's really hard to jump into college without having the intrinsic motivation, or at least the extrinsic skills, like following a schedule and things like that. The discipline around reading and writing. College is super hard. So self-advocacy skills, problem-solving skills, those are real core prerequisites for any kind of future schooling after high school. Personal interests, okay, get a job. What hobbies can you build on? Can you expand on? I'm into cars, so you go and you buy a car to fix up. That's awesome. It gives you something to do and keeps you out of trouble, all good stuff. And of course, sports become an ongoing topic of interest, right? So summer opportunities, again, there's still so many opportunities out there. Did I miss, Carnival Cruise Lines. Oh my goodness. So I forgot to talk about that, and I should have. So I've known now 5 people, one of them has been a client, but 5 people that have gone after high school to Carnival Cruise Lines as like a gap year. And it has been such a rewarding experience for them in so many ways, and not only matched their strengths, but it helped minimize their deficits, because it's such a structured job work environment that I've had one of my clients, one of my friends, brother ended up going to Carnival Cruise Lines and climbed the ladder and became a C-level professional and ended up getting his college degree online. So those kind of opportunities are just exciting to talk about when you think about the child we have that's outside the box, right? And if I were to stay outside the box, what kind of opportunities come up that continue to give my child a chance to grow and learn and mature, right? So as after high school, my kid is not staying home. Oh, yeah, that's true. That's fair. You gotta give them something to do and somewhere to go. So summertime opportunities, Outward Bound is excellent. Excellent opportunity to grow and learn and get outside the home and stand on your own 2 feet. Summer classes are an awesome opportunity. I'll talk about that in a second. And then, obviously life milestones, license, driving, things like that. So obviously, a lot of you guys kind of know this list, but that's important to talk to your child about, so they're not sitting at home on their computer, kind of lost in the distraction of that world, which I think is super hard for high schoolers this day and age. Many of them are stuck. And it's hard to help them work out of that without I don't know, without a Band-Aid like approach. But if you can be positive and inclusive with that kind of Band-Aid approach, then you'll get more out of it, of course, versus trying to do something unilaterally. This is awesome. I'm not sure who knows about this. I'm just learning about this. But if my child is struggling with college readiness like skills, but they want to go, great. You can start taking college courses now. And there are 3 summer courses that kids can register for. One that's just passed. The other one's in the end of June, and I think the other one's in July. And you can sign up for credits that would transfer to most colleges because they're just entry-level classes. English, math, sciences, which I just think this is just so cool. So, because again, it again paints a picture that the brick and mortar world that we are used to as parents is changing forever. And this is one core example. There are kids now in the next 5-10 years that will graduate high school with 2 years of their college credits under their belts, if you could start that early. So something to think about. So some links I will copy and share into this presentation for you to walk away with. And this will be the whole presentation will be accessible to you. And I think we can just email it out to the participants. So Trish, how are we doing?
Yeah, this is all fantastic. See, Zen, I feel.
Do you? I mean,
yes, I feel calm.
You without a yoga mat.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this is all very valuable information. Tools for our toolkit for sure. So it's it's like 1:12. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Your time, of course. Is your presentation? Have you completed it, or do you still have more content?
Oh, yeah. So so there we go.
Oh, questions. Okay. So use that chat. This is a really great opportunity. We'll give about a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. We can follow up and send the presentation, or turn on your microphone if you want, and let's have an open discussion.
Hi, this is Heidi again. There was a question at the beginning, just wondering if there was going to be a posting or a recording of this, and how would folks be able to access that?
So we did record the presentation in the Zoom meeting, so we can certainly get that out to all the participants that registered.
Okay, great. There's also a question here wondering, is there such a thing of middle school students going to take courses at community colleges?
I would say, sure. It has to exist somewhere. I just, what does that remind me of, that old movie? What was the old show where that kid goes to college and graduates? Doogie Howser, MD, right? Yeah, I suspect so. If you have a quirky, bright kid and he's loving science, and you say, I want to earn your college credit this summer, and he says yes, or she says yes, make a phone call, see what you can do. That's a win-win.
Fantastic. Anyone else?
So I'm available.
Yeah,
I think.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, please.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was very helpful. Got a lot of great ideas. And I don't know whether you'll be doing something in the future, but now with this COVID virus in the mix, some of this stuff is difficult, obviously, to carry out. And obviously, parents, I think, have a lot of different challenges, given the amount of some of the rules that we may have had prior to COVID are hard to kind of follow at this point in time. So anything that you have or suggestions on that would be helpful.
So, yeah, there's a truth that we're all just trying to make the best of things as we get through this time period. So, as a teacher, it's the same principle. We're all just trying to make the best of things as we get through this time period. There are parents that both parents that are working. And I sent out an article around Minecraft that it was probably from like ADHDmagazine.com or something. And one of my parents responded, and she goes, "Oh, that was so good. It gave me I released all of my guilt for my child playing 6 hours of Minecraft while I worked today. And you know, like, there are worse things your child could be doing. And I think when you focus on what you can handle, and if you have problems that you want to target and you can be proactive with them, I think our kids need something to do. I tell you, my son he will spend 6 hours listening to Land of Stories if I let him. I mean, that's kind of a problem. I think is eventually going to be like, okay, we have to detox him from Land of Stories. But you know, you try to find what your kid will tap into, and maybe it's positive and productive. You know, it's getting up early and taking your family for a walk before the workday starts. You know, there's no answer that can be ubiquitous to everybody. It's just, we have to be able to let things go because we're parents struggling as well. And honestly, our kids will be fine at the end of this. They will. They're resilient, just like, you know, the human species is resilient. It's just, they'll get through it. It's just, do you want it to be a damaging experience, or based on what you complain about, or what you see as problematic, versus letting things go and then trying to build a schedule that focuses on connecting? You know, what can I do to connect? Well, if you live in a town that allows you to go walk, you go for walks. If you live in a town that has a forest nearby, you go for a hike. If you have some property, you plant a garden together. You know, you go to the store and you just find ways to make something out of nothing. I think that's kind of where I am, and I think it was where a lot of parents are. And kind of in the olden days, I remember that, you know, you get kicked out of your house and say, I don't want to see you back till dinner. Well, that's not necessarily playing out now, but it's a similar kind of, well, I need my kid to be able to just entertain themselves while I get stuff done, and not, you know, and have it not be detrimental. So I'm sorry that's not that helpful. It's just, I think my hope is that by the end of the summer, we're moving, you know, through this, you know, and camps are back open, the outward bounds are open. And for this summer, I think a lot of families are just trying to collaborate with other families so that they have a community to network with and connect with. And people are putting pools in their backyards. It doesn't matter if it's a plastic one. You're just trying to, you know, you go buy a trampoline. You just start to make things in your backyard that looks like a circus, but it allows my kids something to do outside, so that they're not staying inside for the whole time. I have no idea if that was helpful. Sorry.
It was. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you again, Dr. Murphy. And
yeah, so it'd be good for everyone to know that Trish and I were talking about what we might do at the start of the school year, and reconnecting with people on a platform like this around, okay, if we were to get our kids ready, what does it look like? How do we help them? That would be an important topic I think I would like to be a part of if I'm not presenting. So, really, that might be a place to talk. I think having a forum where parents are sharing out ideas is really powerful. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to get through the summer? And just having some kind of listserv where parents can just feel like they can share what they're doing. Even if they're making a schedule for their kids, oh man, can you share that out to 100 interested parents, what you're doing? And then people can steal ideas. And I think that's really where we are. We're a small community, or at least relatively, when you think about the South Shore, working collaboratively together would be an awesome way to get through the summer.
that's a fantastic idea. We should definitely get that together for the fall to kick off. And then this has been great to start our Lunch and Learn series. So as you mentioned early in the presentation, next Wednesday at the same time, noon, Judy will be giving a similar presentation on the whole brain child, with elementary students in mind. So hope you guys can join us for that one as well. So thank you so much. I don't think
Thank
there's
you
any more
so
questions.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good day.